Hey friends, today's novel starts off amazing. Celia, the only female werewolf student, leads a group of werewolf guys at the academy, looking all glamorous. But she's actually struggling to balance family and her own goals. And these strong werewolf guys obey her because she helped them in the selection battle with her speed and strength. The contrast between Celia's strength and the guys' obedience is really striking. Add to that the combat teacher gets special attention to Celia, and the story's tension is instantly at its peak. Come see Celia's story now. Chapter 13. Beginning of Classes. The return journey to the academy was a stark contrast to Celia's previous flight experiences. As the only female among the selected students for the Watcher courses, she was afforded a private cabin on the luxurious aircraft. The solitude provided her with an opportunity for introspection, a chance to process the emotional turmoil caused by her recent family interactions. Celia's independent nature had always driven her to persevere through challenges, but the strain of her family's behavior had finally taken its toll. As she reclined in her plush seat, tears silently traced paths down her cheeks, a physical manifestation of her mental exhaustion. In that moment of vulnerability, she made a silent vow to prioritize her own aspirations and well-being moving forward. 2 months later, the morning sun filtered through the curtains as Celia finished securing her high ponytail, the final touch to her carefully curated appearance. As she contemplated the day ahead, a familiar knock echoed through her room. "Alpha, are you ready?" Jake's cheerful voice called out, his enthusiasm palpable even through the closed door. Without responding, Celia swiftly gathered her essentials: a sleek phone, a compact briefcase housing her notebooks and laptop before striding to the door. As she swung it open, she was greeted by Jake's characteristic grin, a welcome sight amidst the nervous energy permeating the academy. After exchanging brief greetings, Celia locked her room, and the pair set off towards the canteen. Their destination after breakfast would be the inaugural classes of the Watcher course, a prospect that filled even these exceptional werewolves with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The canteen buzzed with anticipation as the 10 selected students, now a tightly knit group, shared their morning meal. Despite their status as the highest-ranked werewolves among their peers, the looming presence of legendary teachers cast a shadow of nervousness over them all. Yet, true to their resilient natures, they managed to intersperse their meal with light-hearted banter, easing the tension. Celia, as the sole female and leader of this elite group, felt a sense of belonging she hadn't anticipated. Her adaptable nature had allowed her to seamlessly integrate into this predominantly male cohort. Her leadership accepted without question. As they finished their breakfast and prepared for their first class, Celia felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges the Watcher course might bring. She was not aware the other candidates had realized already that she had selected them during the melee war, and did not just randomly throw people out of the circle as she could during her attack. After the fight, which left them baffled, they watched the video numerous of times, trying to understand just how she defeated them. Only in slow motion could they manage to see her dexterity, her speed, and her strength. And lastly, they could see how she had carefully selected them out of the 30 or more wolves that remained in the circle at the time of their fight. Skillfully moving between them, she threw their opponents out of the circle, even though some of them were in a more unfavorable position than the other candidate at that moment. She could have had an easier time taking them out, rather than the other. In essence, she was the one who picked them to form their group. As such, being recognized by her, they felt a sense of camaraderie. And even though only 2 months had passed, they were already a pack, sitting with the rest of the guys. She also did not feel awkward in their presence anymore. She was not a talkative person. She did not try to keep a conversation going, and most of the time she did not join in their talks. But strangely, she did not feel excluded. They would always refer to her as well when speaking, and would also respect her status between them. For the last 2 months they stayed from morning to night, always together, either training, learning the rules, or just walking around the city in their free time. As such a tight group was steadily formed. "Hello, class," and welcome to your first course of the semester. I am Gabriel Collins, and of course, as all of you took the SEER test, you surely remember me from your admittance exam. As I told you then, I will be your general knowledge teacher. As for what this actually means, I will be the one teaching you history. Knowledge on every kind of supernatural creatures there are and how to deal with each one. That means weaknesses and strengths. General knowledge on packs, hierarchy and whatnot, and also rogues. You may also think of me as your head teacher, and seek me with other problems you should have. Now then, if you do not have questions, we should begin with a little introduction from each of you. The courses ran throughout the day, and as they realized, beside the breaks for meals, there were no other breaks. They only managed to catch their breath at night, after 8 o'clock, but they could tell it was just so they could sleep, because when they did try to stay some more in the common room to hang out, half of them fell asleep on the couch. From 8 a.m. they had courses on general knowledge, rules and law courses, combat training, strengthening training, combat using weapons training, course on liberal discussions of situations on cases of misconduct tests with alphas, more general knowledge courses, more training, and more law courses until 8 p.m. The only thing they were grateful for was the fact that at least after each course where they had to study, a course of combat followed. In this way they could rest their body and train their minds, and vice versa. After 2 weeks of this tiring lifestyle, finally the general courses students had the opening of their school year. As the teachers would most likely participate at the ceremony, they naturally deduced that during the afternoon they could finally rest, after only undergoing combat training in the morning. Well then, students, after washing up, please go to the central amphitheater for the opening ceremony. Their combat teacher, Rita Kane, smilingly said. He was a buff, tall, middle-aged man, even though his face laughed as he talked. He was actually the most terrifying teacher of all, as he had a 180-degree personality change during training. Hearing his words, the students only then realized the hellish training ended, as most of the time during training, he referred to them as maggots. The only one he referred to with her title was Celia, as he called her Alpha. But it was not because he respected her position between them. It was because secretly he had also become her fan. He watched the Melee War video numerous times in awe. And even if he wouldn't have watched it, just for the fact that she was the only one who could keep up with his training without much sweat, she had already gained his recognition. The group sighed in relief on their way to the showers. They were thankful for the things they learned from their teachers. Their minds and their bodies had strengthened a lot in just 2 weeks. In 2 years they would become remarkable. Just like the Watchers they looked up to. But it was still tiring. Their clothes were soaked with sweat as they walked in the direction of the showers. Honestly, why do we have to go to the opening ceremony? I mean, for us, courses have already started 2 weeks ago. Why can't we just have a break and head to the city? I haven't met some girls in a long time already. I need some female presence in my life. No offense, Alpha. Marcus, the Delta of the pack, quite irritated, asked. The tall blonde man with blue eyes frowned dirt because of the change of plans. Celia slightly smiled and indeed took no offense. She had figured most of their personality by now, and knew that Marcus, who seemed more like a playboy, was actually still waiting for his mate. Even though he always talked about meeting girls, he had never left their group. When they were walking around the city to chase after girls, he only liked to talk about meeting them, but never strayed from the pack. Because His Highness and half of the council are also attending the opening, it would be disrespectful not to attend. Not to mention, this is also our opening ceremony. We did not have one 2 weeks ago. Evan, the Gamma of the pack, answered. The red-haired man, with blue eyes and freckles on his nose, replied to him as he looked towards the ignorant Marcus. Evan was the one that most resembled Celia, if only for the fact that he also did not talk much. As they already reached the showers, and divided into the women's and men's section, heading towards the amphitheater, they walked in an orderly fashion as they were always required to in the area of the academy. Celia as the alpha walked second to last with Jake, the beta, who was half a step behind her on her right side. The rest of the pack were arranged in front of them in rows of two, their black, distinct uniforms and the shining brooches, signifying their status among the new attendants of the academy, kept the other students whispering. All of them were tall and handsome, and each one could attract attention by himself. As a group they were even deadlier. The girls were attracted to their strong alpha aura, while the boys felt respect. For most new students, it was the first time seeing Watcher candidates, as they were the only ones studying this course at the academy. Second-year students were having only practical training and were mostly not present at the academy, moving their eyes towards the back of the group. The students gasped as a never-before image appeared in front of their eyes. The image of one lone girl amongst 9 powerful alpha-ranked werewolves was a sight that could be ignored. Who is that? There is actually a girl beside the Watcher students, asked one of the second-grade students wide-eyed. I don't know. Are they allowing girls in the Watcher courses now? Another girl, just as baffled as the first, pondered about the woman dressed in the black professional uniform, though her clothes were the same as the guys. Strangely, she did not look odd between them. Dummy. They never not allowed girls to take part in the Watcher exams and courses. It is just that the exams are hard and one is also required to be at least a 3rd rank werewolf to actually participate. So no girls could take the admittance test. Not to mention attend the courses, replied the first one, still trailing with her eyes the pack. But then how is she walking beside them? You can't tell me that she is actually 3rd ranked, wondered the second girl, not realizing how rude it was of her to point to the person in question. As she was talking, she must be. Don't you see she is wearing the same uniform? Though she must be last in the pack. Look, she is all the way to the back. What do you mean pack? Another younger girl who was actually the first girl's sister intervened in their discussion. The Watcher students are the only group of students that work like a pack. When they begin the courses, they actually in a sense leave their old pack and form a new one with their classmates. My brother said they do this so their bonds become stronger and they also work together better, replied a 4th girl, just now joining on the conversation. She had only arrived and heard their talk, but as she knew better about the Watcher students' hierarchy, dared to inform the first 3 girls of what she knew. Gussie, your brother is actually in the Watcher courses this year. Right. The 3rd girl asked the 4th girl, realizing where her knowledge of the Watcher students was coming from. Hearing the new information, the 2 second-year students immediately looked at the new girl, who had just joined the conversation, interested in her connection to one of the members of the famous Watcher students. Yup, he is. Actually, he's all the way to the back next to the girl, she said, proud of her big brother. Oh, I see him. You said his name is Jake. Right, asked the 3rd student, who was actually Jessie's classmate, while looking again to see the one she was referring to, just as the group had already walked to the entrance of the amphitheater. Yup, he is actually the bait of the pack, my mom said. Let me tell you, since he passed the exam, she keeps bragging to all of her friends, the young girl said, chuckling, remembering the number of phone calls her mother made that day. The beta. Then why is he in the back? Asked her classmate Sistero. That is because the strongest of the pack always stay in the back, replied Jessie happily. She was also proud of her big brother, though she wouldn't brag about him so openly as her mother did. Then the girl who was walking next to him, her classmate asked, trying to figure out what the position of the girl could be in their midst. To be in the back of the pack. Did it mean she was also one of the strongest, ho? She is their leader. Don't you know? Leah, your father is an assistant to the council. Isn't he? Said Jessie, directing the question to the girl who was her classmate. I don't talk much with my dad, so I wouldn't know from him. But are you for real? You mean she is the strongest? Yeah. Actually, my mom brags about her also, seeing as Jake talks about her a lot to my mom. In the final exam, she was the one who defeated most of the students and became their alpha. She also helped my brother avoid elimination from the final selection. Chapter 14. The King of All Werewolves. In the huge amphitheater, everyone was seated according to the courses they were taking. As part of one of the most respected and important professions, the Watcher's students were placed on the third row in front of the stage, after the rows meant for the teachers went together in their private time. The pack laughed and cracked jokes, but now in public they tried to maintain their composure and did not speak more than necessary. They also shared a pack link, so there was no need to speak aloud. If you were to see them, they looked quite focused on the stage. They all seemed solemn, without any particular emotion evident on their faces in the slightest, and coupled with their black uniforms, one could not help but be silent also. In fact, in this manner the students around them actually were, even though they glanced towards them from time to time whispering, most likely how the students outside had also discussed. When the pack passed by them on their way, they still tried to not disturb the atmosphere that had been imposed by their presence as best they could. One could say around the pack the students were even more respectful and well-mannered than they were during their classes towards their teachers. Of course, not including the ones that taught the Watcher courses. Those professors were legends. As such, not even in a million years could the students from the normal classes correctly assume what went on inside their heads, what thoughts had their full attention. They did not know that inside the minds of the Watcher pack, ones of the most revered of the werewolf race, the members were actually bombarded with jokes. That's right. Using the important link, Marcus was telling them yet another joke. What do you call a lost wolf? Will you stop it with the wolf jokes? The ceremony is about to start. Look. The teachers are taking their seats. Liam, the sixth ranked of the pack, tried to stop the man who was hell-bent on getting all of them in trouble, or at least, make them lose the respect the others had for them. How would it appear if the aloof-looking students would burst out laughing? Everyone would think they were crazy. Unusually, the most stoic of all of them, Evan, replied calmly, which made the joke even funnier, as he had a monotone voice. A werewolf, quickly understanding the pun, and to stop themselves from laughing, some put their hands on their mouth, some bit the inside of their cheeks, clenching their jaws, and some pretended to tie their shoelaces, just so they could laugh without being seen. Celia was the most composed of them, but even she had a small smile on her face, satisfied with their reaction. Marcus still wanted to tell them one more joke, amused by the fact they kept trying not to laugh, when luckily he was interrupted by the loud voice on the stage, which signified the beginning of the ceremony. One of the teachers had quickly greeted the crowd and invited His Highness, the King of All Werewolves, to give an opening speech, even if before Marcus wanted to joke further. With this particular announcement, the goof man had become the most quiet of all of them. The entire hall of people directed their attention towards the stage, and finally everyone quieted down. The current king was known to be a fair and competent person when ruling. The kingdom had advanced by leaps and bounds during his reign, but he was a rigid and solemn person. There was even a rumor circulating around that no one had ever seen him smile, not to mention laugh, and that he had even murdered werewolves for trying to make him show a happy expression. Even people that laughed in his presence were not spared. And all of this happened when he was in a normal mood. What would happen if his mood was reversed? No one would want to satisfy this curiosity, as it could possibly be the last thing they did. Of course, this was only a rumor, but there is no smoke without a fire. Naturally, it was better to be safe than sorry. The king was also a person that was perfect at work, and he expected perfectness out of everyone around him and would punish people at the slightest of mistakes. In times of war, especially with the rogues or other supernatural creatures, he was even more ruthless. There were legends of him taking part in the wars and commanding the front lines directly. If he felt like the time was of the essence, he would go off to the battlefield himself and start tearing the limbs and heads off of countless creatures, single-handedly winning many battles, while instilling fear in his enemies, rendering them unable to continue fighting. Sometimes, he was even used as a reference as a boogeyman for mothers trying to coax their pups to sleep. As such, Not one person said a thing during and after the moment his presence was announced. His Highness, the King of all werewolves, Salas Christian Wolf. He was solemnly presented by a teacher. And like on cue, every person in the room rose from their seat and bowed. They could only raise their heads and sit down again when he allowed them to. "Please raise your head and take a seat," he briefly said. Everyone did as ordered and sat once more. Celia also did as he instructed. She took her seat before finally raising her head to look at the strongest of all the werewolves. A glance that caused her to turn to stone, as even her breathing felt like it was about to stop involuntarily. The king's ebony hair was combed towards the back of his head, giving him a clean, elegant look. His dark hair contrasted his pale, almost white face, on which there were only 2 specks of color. His bright blue eyes that made her feel like she could be lost in them. They were like the deep blue ocean, and even though they felt cold, it felt like they could stun her by just a glance, were he to direct his gaze towards her. Shadowing his eyes were black long eyelashes and thick straight eyebrows. His sharp nose and small lips were perfectly sculpted on his face, and his sharp jaw completed the perfect look. Never in her life had she seen such a beautiful person. But it was not just his looks that mesmerized her, nor the alpha aura that surrounded him. It was like his whole being was capable of capturing her very soul. She had never been attracted to a man in the way like she was now. So unexpectedly she felt her heart start beating out of her chest just looking at him. Normally the aura of the king should have made everyone submit themselves, or at least it should have made them keep a quiet and fearful manner, not even daring to look directly in his eyes. But inexplicably she felt just that, the desire to meet his eyes. What was wrong with her? She thought, not even her mate. Towards him she felt the mate pull. Made her feel like this. How could one have such feelings just by seeing another person? For the first time, this only happened when seeing your mate. And it was not like he could be hers. She already had one. One werewolf had only one mate. The goddess took each soul she created and split them into separate beings, creating the mates who would eventually find each other and fall in love. Rejecting one mate meant rejecting your other half, and because they were created before being born, it was not like a new mate could be created. Each soul was only split into. Was it because of what the teacher informed her before? The fact that they shared the same rank, so she didn't feel compelled to submit. Studying his face, she suddenly felt his gaze was on her for half a second, making her heart stop beating in that very moment. And although the locking of their eyes felt like it was intentional to her, she dismissed the thought quickly as his gaze did not stop. His blue eyes resumed scanning the room. Perhaps he was checking his new watchers, and wanted to inspect them. She should really snap out of it, she thought. Her thoughts were interrupted when he coughed once like he had wanted to clear his voice and spoke. His voice was even more alluring and soothing, making her breathing hitch and her cheeks assume a red tinge. But as she was not one to show much of her emotions on her face, she quickly composed herself, reverting to her aloof normal self on the outside. Though inward for the most part of the speech, she did not even stay focused on what he actually said. She only concentrated on his tone and hoarse voice. The ceremony ended roughly 2 hours later, and as the final teacher took the stage announcing its closing, the group of watchers made their way towards the door. It finally ended. Marcus sighed relieved, before continuing, using the pack link. Now then, should we grab a bite to eat in the city, before scanning them all? Or should we eat here? I am famished. I could eat a piglet whole. Would you stop it with the wolf jokes? You almost got us in trouble before the ceremony. Jake scolded the man, who was still up to no good. Let's eat in the city. I am craving some pizza. Celia intervened timely, trying to defuse the situation. And of course her intervention, Alpha, quieted them both as they all agreed to her suggestion. Their plan was set, but unfortunately, before they separated to go change their clothes in normal street ones, a person stopped in their way, gaining their attention. Where do you guys think you're going? The interrogatory voice of their teacher reached their ears. We are about to head to the city. Celia responded politely, turning her head to face the owner of the voice, as did the other Watcher students. "No, you are not. His Highness wants to meet this year's Watcher students, so you will be going to his office here at the Academy to meet him." Gabriel quickly dismissed their plans, a small smirk resting on the corner of his mouth. Somehow his appearance seemed satisfied at shattering their hopes. The majority of them thought, if not all of them, "But teacher, it is our first day off in a while," Marcus complained with a crying puppy-like voice. "Whoever told you it is your day off? Yes, classes are suspended, but only because His Highness is still here, and he will meet you. You will also be dining with him. So no, you do not have time off," Gabriel explained to them, looking even more pleased at their hopeless faces. They all looked crushed. After having hoped to roam around the city and just laze around, it was all changed because of their teacher. They should have left earlier, so Gabriel could not have found them, and he would be the one to blame. Now they were forced to meet His Highness no matter what. Could they still leave? And just deny having met him? They were 10 against 1, so if they all denied having seen him, who could say they lied? "I know what you are thinking of. You rascals. Don't get any funny ideas, and try to still leave blaming it on me for not finding you. So much for camaraderie and trust between us teacher and students. I thought we were a tightly united group." Gabriel quickly scolded his students almost as if he read their minds. "Teacher, we only trust in our pack amongst ourselves. It has nothing to do with you." Marcus immediately denied his teacher's assumptions, still visibly upset at the words that not one of the other Watcher students denied. Though Gabriel had kept his silence for a brief moment, hoping someone would, Gabriel became baffled. Marcus did not try to even deny that this was what they were thinking of doing. And the others, well, their silence meant a tacit agreement to his statement. "You traitors. I cannot even let you find your own way towards His Highness's office. Come along with me now," he finally ordered, raising his voice. Dejected, they did not have another choice but to listen to him. The Watcher students seemed unwilling to follow Gabriel, so very heavily all of them stepped towards the administrative building, as if still afraid they would run away if they got the chance. Gabriel walked behind them, and, just as he expected, from time to time Marcus kept turning around checking his position, before sighing and moving his feet along the others, shaking his head from side to side. Gabriel made sure to not let anyone out of his sight as they walked. He led them towards the central building, walking through the different hallways, until finally they reached a double door. He knocked once and immediately the door was opened from inside by Micah, inviting them in. Chapter 15. Introductions and a Day Off. With Micah's invitation, the pack entered one by one, until Celia, the leader who was customarily the last in the pack, finally entered, with Gabriel also following a second later. The Watcher students, the best-ranked werewolf students of the current year, looked around a little nervous, but still maintained their calm outward look. It was not every day they had the opportunity to meet the king, so naturally they held a little interest in speaking with him, although not that much interest as a visit to the city apparently, considering Gabriel had been afraid they would escape if he so much dared look away for half a second. The king worked a lot and he was also not a very sociable person. One could count on one hand the events he participated in a year. As such, not many people had the honor of meeting him. Most could never meet him in person even once in their entire lifetime, although they were bestowed the honor of speaking with the King of Werewolves, a living legend. The Watcher students of course wouldn't become haughty and overstep themselves. As such, even the curious gazes were restrained a lot, not wanting to anger the man who was a subject of many infamous rumors. Glancing inside the large and well-lit room, they saw 4 couches, arranged in a circle. 2 larger couches were set one in front of the other with a small coffee table in between them. They were placed directly parallel with the windows, and the other 2 smaller couches were placed the same, one in front of the other. The nearest couch had its back towards the entrance, while the other had its back in front of the large desk, where Salas was still checking some documents, occupied with urgent work most likely. The king did not raise his eyes to look at them, so his beta, Micah, asked them to take a seat and wait for a little while longer. Gabriel unceremoniously immediately plopped down on the smaller couch closer to the entrance, and asked his students to sit on the larger couches that were just in front of him, on his left and right sides. Celia was already mixed between the other Watcher students, so she could have chosen any part of the couch she preferred to take a seat on. But perhaps feeling a bit nervous and conscious to sit too close to the man that had made her lose her breath earlier in the amphitheater, she decided to sit down near Gabriel's left side, on the part of the couch also closest to the entrance, and at the same time the part furthest from the king. This was her intention, one she wasn't able to follow through, unfortunately, as Gabriel spoke just when she was about to lower herself to the couch chest level. "You are the alpha, Celia. Please sit on the other end of the couch," he smilingly said and pointed to where she should move to. Celia did not understand why her position entitled her to move to the other end, when Gabriel as a teacher was near the entrance, regardless of his rank. But she also had no valid reasons to refuse her teacher's words, so she listened to him and sat where he said, although she did not feel comfortable to do so, as the other side of the couch was the closest to the king's desk. Being so close to the king, a distinct lovely smell enveloped her nose, even more than when she had entered, making her heart rate increase, with her nervousness almost shooting through the roof, as she was afraid that the king would certainly be able to hear her elevated heartbeat. Celia became even more anxious, but as her aloof face rarely showed such emotions on her expressions, on the outside she looked quite calm, a calmness that she soon also felt on the inside of her heart, realizing that her state of anxiousness could also be attributed to the solemn moment of being introduced to His Highness. A few moments later, as the Watcher students waited patiently for the king, Salas signed the last document he was checking, then placed the closed file on his desk. With his urgent matters taken care of, the tall man rose on his feet and buttoned the coat of his black suit, before making his way to the couch nearest his desk. Seeing him move, all the students as well as Gabriel tried to stand up and bow, but in response to their greeting, he immediately raised his hand to stop them, and also affirmed his gesture with his words, "Please take a seat. There is no need to bow. We are between family, as we are now in the same pack. The Watcher packs are all smaller parts of the royal pack. There is no need for other formalities." See, Elias' heart skipped a beat hearing his voice, and the fact that he had referred to them as family only served to unsettle her more. But luckily, because of her expressionless face, one could not tell such a thing. At his words, the students took their seat again, while Salas also approached the smaller couch. "Well then, you all know my name. Please tell me yours," he said as soon as he was in front of them, while he looked directly in Elias' eyes. The close distance between them, as Salas coincidentally or not, chose the end of the couch nearer Elias' position to sit, rather than the middle of the couch, made her feel once again nervous. For the 10th time today, not to mention, to be under his scrutinizing gaze, to be watched by his ocean blue eyes that did not seem to even blink. Celia felt her heart enwrapped by him in its entirety, making her unable to look anywhere else but in his sparkling clear irises. From far away she had thought he was beautiful, but as she avoided as much as she could to stare at him for too long, she had failed to realize just how handsome he truly was, breathtakingly so. My name is Celia Blair," she answered with a bit of a lower tone. An evident stammer. She had no problem speaking before. She had never stuttered, but she did just now. Her cheeks quickly turned pink hearing her own words, while her interlaced fingers that rested on her lap clenched together tighter, whitening her knuckles. At this point, she could only hope they would all assume this reaction was also because of his illustrious position amongst them. "Nice to meet you, Miss Blair. I have high hopes for our first female Watcher." His baritone voice tingled her ears, as he showed a small smile. Didn't everyone say he did not smile? She thought, as she tried to keep the small gasp she felt like releasing inside her chest. "I feel honored, Your Highness," Celia replied, successfully managing not to slur her words this time. A fight for the alpha position was especially inspiring. You chose your team well. Salas sincerely commended Celia. It was after all a true fact that she had hand-picked her own team. If her pack members had noticed this fact, the 100-year-old werewolf king of course would know even. Celia's cheeks took on an even brighter shade of red. As the intelligent yet one-track, minded person, had not realized her actions were that easily distinguishable. Not confirming or denying his deduction, she only slightly nodded her head in recognition of his words, but did not feel herself worthy enough to accept the king's compliment. She also could not tell him that what he thought was wrong. It would be treason to lie to the king. Noticing her gesture, Salas had not insisted with the praises more. As he moved his attention to the next watcher student, because his gaze directed to another person, Celia felt she had received a merciful pardon. The introduction continued for several minutes, with each simply stating their names and answering one or two simple everyday questions, before the king spoke again, asking them about their studies and life at the academy. The meeting took no longer than half an hour to finish, but the king seemed he still wanted to inform them of another matter. They guessed this, as he opened his mouth again, but was not able to continue his words when the ringtone of a phone call interrupted him. In fact, Salas was really about to suggest to eat dinner together, but his phone rang just as he was in the middle of inviting them. Taking the phone out of his coat's pocket, he frowned, checking the lighted-up screen, then answered the call. Be it that showed it was a call from the council's building. Could not be ignored considering the work scope of the second-ranked werewolves. Naturally, he had to listen in case it was something of utmost importance. Putting his phone near his ear, he listened to the person at the end of the call. A minute later, while slightly furrowing his eyebrows in what appeared an annoyed or angered expression, he closed the ongoing call, before putting the phone back in its place. Then, looking a bit regretful, he apologized that he had to leave because of urgent matters. He thought the students would be feeling sad for the lost opportunity to share a meal, as he was not aware that the latter had actually tried to dodge the meeting, so he wanted to reschedule another meal with them. But as the king, naturally his schedule was always full and he could not make such a promise. Even coming to the academy had barely been forcefully squeezed in his busy program, so he could only let the students leave. As a matter of fact, perhaps it was better like this, the king thought. Once the students left the office and were quite at a safe distance away, they all sighed, relaxing their hearts. Just outside his office, they could not afford to release a relieved breath, knowing that the man on the other side of the door could possibly hear them. His aura was no joke, making them feel like if they were to attack him altogether, even giving up their life, they would not be able to leave a scratch behind. The current king was a force to be reckoned with. The meeting ending earlier than intended was quite a fortunate event for the students whose hope had previously been shattered. With still a lot of free time left from the day, they could resume their original plan. With this in mind, they each went to their rooms and returned shortly changed and ready for some fun out. Being born from alpha eaters, the pack members all had a substantial background in each one. Besides, Celia had a car in the academy's parking lot, though when they went out they did not take one separately and preferred to only take 3 cars, just enough to accommodate the 10 members. Conscious that someone could interrupt them again, all the members hurried to alight the cars, when a tender female voice was heard. "Brother," the young girl called, just as Jake opened the driver's door. Recognizing the familiar voice, the pack's beta did not continue to alight his car and turned around to search for the voice's owner. Already inside in the passenger seat, Celia had just finished buckling her seatbelt, when the voice also captured her attention, and looked out the window, gazing at a few feet away. It was apparent that Jake knew the person who called. As a small girl approached him, she saw them talking and also Jake sighing, before agreeing to what the girl asked of him. Not one to intrude and listen on in other people's private talks, she tried not to use her wolf hearing most of the time. This, coupled with the fact that the radio in the car was turned on at a high volume, she did not know the subject of their discussion. Even her gaze did not linger more on them. As she waited for them to finish, Soon enough, Jake approached the car on the passenger side with 4 girls following behind. The one closest to Jake was the one who he had spoken to, and 3 others who had been standing near her when she was talking to Jake earlier. With a resigned face and reluctant movements, he opened the passenger's door and, looking at Celia apologetic, spoke, "Alpha, I am sorry for the delay. Please meet my sister Jessie. Jessie, please meet my Pax Alpha," he said with an unwilling voice, and waited for them to greet each other. "Hello, Jessie. My name is Celia. Pleased to meet you," Celia greeted with a gentle tone, while extending her hand, and waited for the other to shake it. Jessie immediately took hold of her hand with both hands, and enthusiastically shook it, a small smile adorning the round young face. "The pleasure is all mine, Alpha. I have heard so much about you. Please call me Celia. The guys are obligated to call me Alpha because of the rules, but I prefer my name," Celia said expressionlessly, but the corners of her lips were already slightly tugging up in her usual almost unabateable smile. She could not deny she was a little overwhelmed because of the attention. Beside Clarissa, it's the first time another girl seemed happy at talking to her. "Okay, I will do so. These are Leah, my classmate, her sister Lisa, and Lisa's classmate, Angie." Jessie pointed at each one of the girls, introducing them to Celia. This time Celia only nodded, acknowledging the other girls. In the first place, she was not a sociable person. She treated Jessie friendlier because she was Jake's sister. And anyway, the other girls did not seem that enthusiastic as Jessie to meet her. It was evident, considering they were silently checking Jake out, and only when their names were mentioned. "Now then, Alpha, my sister would like to come with us to the city. She and her friends do not have a car. Would that be all right with you?" he said reluctantly while looking directly at Celia's eyes for any sign of disapproval. Then also added, using the pack link, "I had to ask because she threatened me with telling my mom, and I would like to avoid a 2-3-hour-long call from her. But if you feel uncomfortable, it is not a problem to refuse." "Okay, I can ride in the other car. They can all ride in this one." Celia, of course, wouldn't refuse. The young girl was Jake's sibling, so it was not a big deal to also bring them along. Not to mention, she was only a passenger in Jake's car. It was not really her decision to make. As she replied, she was already about to unbuckle her seatbelt when he denied her offer to move to another car. "No, it is all right. Jessie and her classmate can ride with I'd but ask Marcus to bring his car also and take the other girls." Jake immediately refused, then went to the other car, without waiting for someone to say more. The ride to the city was a little tiring in itself. Jessie was curious about Celia and kept asking questions about the training and the acceptance exam. From time to time, Jake intervened, knowing well enough that Celia did not like to talk much. Even now he could see she was forcing herself to reply gently to his sister. From his own experience, when the pack talked and joked around, Celia quite liked to listen to them, but she was not one to speak much. After some time, he stopped the questions altogether when Jessie got a little too personal. She'd asked Celia if she had a mate or at least a boyfriend already. Jake immediately intervened then, and the questions finally stopped. Arriving in the city, Jake asked his sister where should he drop them off, but she only said they would tag along wherever they went, so they could go back together. He wanted to refuse, but Celia accepted it before he could. She already knew from the beginning that coming with them was the actual purpose, and though Jake had asked his sister, he of course knew as well this was the girls' intention. The girls had thought that the guys would go to a club, but they were surprised to find them roaming the mall instead, and even more surprising actually staying together without separating. They also went to a family-friendly restaurant, instead of a fancy one, which was unusual considering that all of the pack members looked and were dressed in high-end fashion. "Are we eating here?" Lisa asked, checking from left to right the place, her face showing a little distaste that she did not manage to hide in time. "Yes, this is always where we eat," Marcus replied, showing a similar face towards her, then using the pack link. Also added, but we will probably switch to another place to make sure we don't run into you next time. He was usually a sociable person, perhaps the most sociable of the entire pack. He liked to talk and meet new people, and he could find subjects to talk about with anyone. But the ride here made him reconsider this part of his personality. He should choose in the future who to talk to. The girls would not stop asking him about himself and about the other members, as they sat in the back seat of his car. It did not seem like they were only looking for a ride to the city. He could bet they were actually looking for boyfriends. Evan had also ridden in the car with them, but after asking him a few questions to which he did not bother to reply, at least in common courtesy, they gave up quickly. Unluckily for him, Marcus did not possess such foresight, and as a result only he was assaulted with questions. The pack members did not say more to the girls, as they took their seats at a window table, ignoring Lisa, who also sat, seeing the brisk manner in which she was talked to. Not too long during the meal, Lisa found another target for her questions. She saw that Celia was unusually quiet and did not interact so much with the other guys, but still they kept including her into their talks, and each one treated her very well. Could you tell me how is it that a girl as frail as you managed to defeat so many strong alphas? It baffles me that you defeated all the gentlemen here and you can all still get along so well. Her face adorned with a smirk, and an evident sarcasm in her voice. Indirectly she implied that Celia had used her charms to take the leader position. In fact, this is what she really thought. She imagined that the beautiful girl before her had actually convinced the 9 guys, sitting around her protectively, to help her during the test. She could see that even in the mall, where academy rules were no longer necessary to be applied, Celia was always placed in the middle of the guys, and they catered to her each time they could. If they did not help her, how was it possible to not only pass the test, but also take the leader position? Celia did not reply. Not that she did not want to. She did not have time, because almost the same time the guys answered for her. "It is none of your business," was in some way or another the general response from them. It only differentiated slightly for each one. They did not try to answer anything more. Answering would only seem like making excuses for her. And why was it necessary to do so in front of a no-name girl? Besides, sooner or later, as a watcher, her power would be revealed by it, and actions spoke better than words. Extra. A day in the council's life. The headquarters of the council. Has everyone arrived yet? Asked preoccupied the leader of the council, while at the same time kept his concentrated gaze on the files in front of him. He hadn't lifted his eyes at all since he had started working. The stern-looking older man was currently reading some important documents received from watchers in missions from all around the world. Usually at this time not a single soul dared interrupt him, other than His Highness. In fact, right now he was reading about the exile of an alpha from a high-ranking European pack. It was not a child's play to dismiss a leader of such a pack. As such, his agreement to the report the watchers had sent to the headquarters was absolutely needed. But concentrated as he was, he wouldn't forget about the meeting focusing on a particular subject. That matter was of utmost importance. It preceded every other problems by leap bounds. "Yes, they are waiting for you in the conference room. The last person arrived just 5 minutes ago," his assistant replied immediately, while bringing another stack of files for the elder to check. Hearing his answer, the head councilor briskly took his eyes off from the documents, before turning his sharp, cold gaze to the professionally dressed young man. Having been his assistant for almost 10 years already, how could the lad not know his priority right now? Had he turned sloppy because everything was going too smoothly? Then what are you waiting for? Elias, the discussion we will have is of utmost significance for our whole race. How could you wait to tell me until I asked you myself? Is your head in the cloud, man? Reprimanded loudly the elder, while he had impatiently let go of the documents, and was already on his feet going towards the door. "But you said that you would be reading the report about the expulsion of the alpha of one of the biggest packs in Europe, as the watchers need a reply from the council before proceeding with the punishment. I thought the matter of the meeting today could wait until you finished," replied the young man, feeling wrongly accused, as he followed the councilor out of the office. The leader turned towards the man and narrowed his eyes at his naivety, but he still kept going. You youngster, the expulsion of the Alpha is nothing. Do you think we can easily find a time when we can all be present to hold the meeting? Without the knowledge of His Highness. He is always watching us like a hawk. He is now at the academy for the opening ceremony, and then he will have dinner with the Watcher's students. This is the perfect time. We have waited for this hard-to-come-by opportunity for over a year already. He huffed upset, as his forehead was littered with sweat drops and his face was already pale from worrying of being caught. He was already many years past 100 years. An old man. His time was running out. Of this he was aware. For his whole life, he had respected the monarchy and had never broken any rules. But now, in fact, the meeting he was about to hold was treason, as the council meetings could only be held with prior notice to His Highness. He knew this, but nothing could stop him from holding the meeting. His Highness had turned muddled-headed over the years. He was no longer looking at the bigger picture. He had already lost his way. To safeguard the whole werewolf race, he had to take the matter in his own hands. It was also in the best interest for Salas, the elder thought, kept trying to convince himself of his righteousness. And, fortunately, the rest of the council members had agreed to his words. They also shared his worries and were ready to do everything in their power to ensure the plan they had thought of together would succeed. They were so firm in accomplishing this goal that even if they were to be extroverts, it would not matter. Arriving in front of the conference room, he did not wait for Elias to open the doors, with determination enveloping his heart steadying it into place. He clasped the doorknobs of his hands and forcefully pushed the double door that stood between him and a brighter future. Unbothered by the loud noises the wooden frames made as they clashed against the walls, he decisively walked inside, his heavy steps carrying his final resolve. The atmosphere in the council room was solemn. Looking from left to right, the council members' expressions strikingly resembled his own. His worries and problems were shared by the others. He knew of this with certainty. Absolutely every single council member's visage was pale and stressed, but beneath their appearances they all shared his determination. He could see real sins in their eyes and a desire to take this traitorous decision until the bitter end. For this he was thankful, not waiting any longer, as he knew that each second could be the last before they were caught. He briskly walked inside and headed towards the leader's seat. Once seated, without further ado, the elder started the meeting. Gentlemen, the meeting today is of utmost importance. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your cooperation. We have gathered all the evidence we can think of. We have gathered the information from all the sources possible and impossible. We have even bribed and used everyone we know of. All the assistants closest to His Highness are in fact our people. Now it is the time to act. His voice was already hoarse from the beginning, and it would continue to worsen as time passed. Finishing these initial words, he closed his eyes, solidifying his belief once more, then opened them again to continue. Now let us begin talking. He started to speak, but did not manage to utter more as the door, that had been closed by Elias after they entered, was harshly opened. Tall and solemn, possessing a somber face that seemed capable of freezing their souls, the high-ranking werewolf suddenly stood in the doorway. It was the person they least expected to appear, and their sources assured them of his inability to seek them at this hour with certainty. It couldn't be. They had a double spy amidst them. At this frightening realization, the elders' faces paled in his presence. Every one of them were guilty of betrayal. Unfortunately, their treason had been discovered. You geezers! How dare you hold the current meeting without my knowledge? Salas's voice was at a normal volume, but anger could be felt in it. Your Highness, this is... The leader of the council tried to say an excuse. Emery, please do not try to lie to me. Joshua already confessed that he was bribed by you. So I advise you to reconsider your words. He interrupted. He knew that if he did not say this, the leader of the council would mislead him indefinitely. He would never admit the accusations placed on him. The old leader was truly angered. Not only did His Highness dare to call him Emery, even though everyone knew he hated that name, now he had also no other way out but to confess. Really, that Joshua had turned out to be a double agent. He only pretended to comply with them, but was in fact still working for His Highness. He should have known that a Gamma would not easily betray his Alpha, without any valid reason to refute the king. Emery sighed and looked directly in Salas's eyes. All right, I confess, but it is all my fault. Please do not punish the others. I assume full responsibility, he said, his heart heavy with remorse because he was caught before they accomplished their goal, not of regret for his treason. Really, Emily, how did we get to this stage? In the past you would have never done such a thing. The king stated, disappointed, while quickly looked at each one of them, under his scrutinizing gaze. The council members lowered their eyes and pretended to look at their hands or at the table. They would gaze anywhere else but at Salas. You have left us with no other choice, Your Highness. The fate of the kingdom, we must take it from your hands and deal with this situation on our own. The council leader stated, aggrieved, but with his confidence renewed. He was already caught. Might as well lay all the cards on the table and speak frankly. I have left you with no choice. I still have time. Why do you still insist on this subject? Emery, leave the matter to rest already, Salas said, sighing. He already knew their problem. It was the same as always. These damn geezers. Really, they could never leave him alone. They were already old werewolves, but still minded his personal business. Even now he had to cut short his meeting with the Watcher students and come here because of them. I will not, Your Highness. This meeting will take place whether you accept it or not. We must have an heir. Trust us. We have gathered all the information necessary. We have details on all the eligible werewolves maidens gathered here, and we have also correlated with your preferences. The elder proudly informed as he pointed towards the projector that had been set up by Elias. The PowerPoint presentation was already rolling, and a big title could be seen on the wall: Project of Priority 1. Plan for the future heir Emery. Enough already. I will deal with my personal life on my own. Salas expressed upset again. A clear, vexed tone could be sensed in his voice. Your Majesty, firstly, what personal life you speak of? You have no such thing. And secondly, would you please stop it with the Emery? My name is Victor. The old man already had tears in his eyes. The kid he watched growing up kept teasing him, even though the latter knew he hated his girlish name. Your name is Emery Victor Reynolds, so of course I have to call you Emery. Right. Emery, Salas asked again. It seemed that the tears that were already threatening to fall from the old man's eyes did not affect him. Of course. He knew it was only a trick. Salas sighed again, as he always sighed numerous of times when he dealt with the council members. Really now, they were using the meetings in which they should be discussing important things for stupid reasons. It seems as though they were turning into children.